Good morning again. This is Barry with the African American Chamber of Commerce. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I first would like to thank Congressman Evans and his staff for joining us today for this important discussion. There's a lot going on, especially now during COVID-19. So to make sure that our members are well informed on what's taking place not only locally but also at the federal level where decisions are happening. At this time, I would like to ask everyone if they can just mute their devices. If people aren't muted, it's sort of hard to hear the congressman when he gets started. So please mute your devices and thank you in advance. I also would like to give a huge thank you to Karen Lewis. She's one of our board members, but she's also the Assistant Vice President for External Affairs at Drexel University. And she was very crucial in getting this set up. So definitely would like to thank her for her assistance and also for her support as one of our board members. And then next, I'm going to kick it over to our president, Donovan S. West, for some brief remarks.
First of all, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much to Congressman Evans and your team for making yourself readily available to address our members and others that are joining us this morning. Thank you, Barry, also for coordinating this meeting. We really appreciate that. I had the pleasure maybe a couple of weeks ago when Sherry Gregg was doing a live on Facebook to interact with Congressman Evans as we were providing, some information to many people on that live about, the Triple P funding and other questions and concerns. And so I'm very happy that we're able to, on this forum, have some of the dialogue about, some of the latest updates, not just about, that funding, but also other, efforts that are coming our way and that also exist. So thanks again, and I'm looking forward to having some rich dialogue on the topic.
Thank you, Donovan. So I have the honor of introducing Congressman Evans. So for those of you who do not know, he represents Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. But before his time in Congress, he served as state representative here in Pennsylvania, and he later became the first African American chairman of the PA House's Appropriations Committee. Congressman Evans has always been an outspoken advocate for small and diverse businesses. And he's well regarded as a pragmatic leader who always puts public policy above politics. And without further ado, I want to introduce Congressman Evans.
Thank you for the introduction. I greatly appreciate it. And I say good morning to everyone who is on the call this morning. What I like to find out is, do you want to go right to questions, or you want me to give you a little sense of the lay of the land?
Can you just tell us a little more about what's been happening from the PPP to now to the HEROES Act?
Okay.
What should we expect from there?
I'd be more than glad to. I have two of my staff people, Felicia and Lauren. Felicia is the person who does like the local day-to-day. Lauren does the Washington, D.C. What I like to approach is, obviously we didn't ask for this pandemic, but we are in it now. And through this pandemic, there's a lot of opportunity. For the first time in a long time, the reason I say it is, particularly for small businesses and particularly for African-American business. And although it may be challenging, I share with you for the first time, there's huge interest in minority businesses like never before. You're talking about there's been $700 billion that have been invested to be made available. And I know consistently throughout the process, it's always been down to the issue about the availability of access to capital. If any of you have the kind of dollars you need, you can make any enterprise that you have do extremely well. But the fact of the matter is the way that this system has worked, even with the Small Business Administration, it's the banks that basically who you go to, and it's the banks who basically decide if you get that loan. Where SBA come in, they're just a guarantor. So what does that all mean? What happened is a little thing called the pandemic came along, and that suddenly changed the dynamics. As a result of that pandemic, it has made people take some second looks. So in the first one, which was like 349 billion, what happened was the priorities, in my view, were set that the larger banks were setting with their typical customers. So if you was not bankable, more than likely you had no relationship, you was not in. The second time around, which was 310 billion, what we did is we started raising issues. I'm on the small business committee. I'm the vice chair of it, and the chairwoman is Nydia Vasquez. She's out of New York, and also Maxine Waters is chair of the finance committee. So with that kind of combination, for the first time, I think we got a chance to make the changes that we need to be. So the second time around, CDFIs, credit unions, other entities that would tend to be more friendly and an inducement of more competition into the system. So now you see, so now in the third aspect of the bill going to the heroes, we made some other more changes on the PPP. One, we've at least the bill we passed, looking to extend the issue from 2 years to 5 years. We're also looking at the aspect of eliminating what you call the 75-25 provision that's there. There's still over 100 billion still available. And then there's also the emergency loan, which is also available. And Felicia or Lauren can talk about that. The other thing is I introduced a bill along with a colleague of mine from Flint, Michigan, that is a local relief bill, which would be $50 billion. And the purpose of that is it would be set up sort of like community block grants that go to locale. In addition, I'm forming another alliance with a congressman out in the state of Oregon that specializes with restaurants. Now he's talking about 120 billion. Now both of these two initiatives I just told you about is over and above. Because what I have found out is, look, businesses are very diverse. They are not monolithic, and particularly small minority business. And the question is, we got to talk about the future. What's the future going to look like? With the public health aspect, the question is, how do you deal with social distancing? How do you operate in this environment? And that's a very important factor. In addition, we provided money for the purpose of small business development center like Temples, the Enterprise Center, which is in West Philadelphia with Della Clark, Minority Business Development. So we gave money to support groups. And I come to this call because all of you are very, very important to the well-being, not just of the city of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or Jersey or Delaware doing business there, but you're very important to this nation. So I've always been a strong advocate in making sure that things are available. And I come on this call saying to you that I want to make my whole office, I'll be accessible to you. My office is going to be accessible to you because I think it's important as you go through this. So through this crisis, there's opportunity. And I know it is difficult, and I mean, probably no more difficult than you deal with every single day. But the last piece I want to add that although I can talk to you about small business development, CDFIs, all this thing, I don't think this problem will be addressed personally until you deal with the public health perspective. I think public health perspective is very important. It's important to employees, it's important to workers. Because at the end of the day, even though governors and mayors are saying that doors are reopened and people can go to business, at the end of the day, if people do not feel safe, they are not going to either come to work, they're not going to open up their business. It's always a challenge. So you got to strike that balance. How can we accomplish? That's why I've been a strong advocate for universal testing advocate for tracing, all of those things that I've been supportive of. So you got to do both. I know that's not down your alley to do testing and that's out of your bailiwick, but that's something that people like myself have to continue to push for. We push for more money for testing. As a matter of fact, a group of African American doctors and churches have gotten together and they're taking the initiative to do some things. So we're trying to be helpful to that measure too. So it's all of those things together because you kind of got to have an environment that's created for you in a way at the end of the day that your customers and your workers have an environment that they feel is safe and secure. So what I'm gonna do is stop right there and open up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Congressman, for
Yes.
your commentary and for providing the kind of oversight that you have, both locally and representing also, of course, in our capital. One of the things that it's from from the chamber's perspective. When we talk about businesses being ready, right? COVID-19 ready. You mentioned just now, public health is number one, and we believe the same thing. Public health leads to financial health, and so with that being said, what do you think? I guess needs to happen as it relates to providing those businesses the kind of additional support or more specific support around, maybe infusing that public health into the onboarding process. Our governor obviously has mapped out a very detailed plan for the red, yellow, and green, and what it looks like in terms of certain steps and measures. But from a financial standpoint, perhaps the testing of employees, the sanitizing of the space, the provision of PPE. What are your thoughts around something that is packaged in that space, to help minority businesses, to be more specific, on board with the sense of, not only are they saving themselves and their potential customers, but also helping to be a part of that overall, campaign to engage consumers and reduce anxiety.
3 weeks ago, I wrote a letter to the governor and to the mayor. Matter of fact, the same letter, and basically said to them that because the impact that is specifically happening within the African American community, that the African American community needed to be a priority. So when you talk about first responders, you can talk about individuals who work in grocery stores, who drive SEPTA buses, who more than likely, you name it, are usually the ones that are more vulnerable, and particularly with what's happening in the African American community. So there is no question, in my view, and I've raised that with the way it works is we vote on the money and it goes to the state and the city for distribution. So I suggest to you from this call that council people and state legislators need to be in this discussion the same way you're having it with me, because I totally agree with you. You will never rebuild this economy. As a matter of fact, the chairman of the Federal Reserve said on Sunday that he talked about the economy rebuilt not until 2021. Okay, this is 2020, May of 2020, and he talked about 2021. So it's going to take some time for rebuild, and that means there's going to have to be redesign of how, depending on what your business is, a redesigned strategy. I don't think you can go back to January with the way things are done. So the things that you are raising, the reason I brought up Small Business Development Center, because I was talking to them about 3 weeks ago, and Temple specifically, and they talked about having enterprises or webinars on issues like e-commerce. As you know, in restaurant cases, I don't know how many, they talked about using the e-commerce aspect. They talked about the hospitality aspect. So I think those of us in government will have to ensure that there are the building blocks or the access. The reason I'm on this call is to think through, for us to think through the configuration of how you do business in this type of environment. And I think unless you do it, that will be a determining factor if a consumer decides to come to your business, yes or no. So I do agree. And even in this initiative, we did set up money for what I call the intermediaries to be supportive of the small business community if there are things you do not know. So I don't disagree with anything you say in terms of, you can talk about massing, all the things that come with it, right? All those things, because you're really going to
Right.
have to talk about reimagining how you deliver business, because that's going to be a driving factor, in my view, in terms of consumerism.
Yeah, good points. Good points. So let me see if are there any questions from our audience currently. Let's see here. Charnel says, our firm's got all available grant and loan funding, including Triple P and the EIDL grant and loans. Since we have less work, we have a smaller staff. It's a real challenge to spend 2.5 months payroll in just 8 weeks. For Charnel, I would say that, and please, Congressman, you can definitely add to this comment. But I would just say that if you do not, have enough going on in terms of your personnel expenses, if for whatever reason, and we've heard this many times over, for certain businesses where their employees are getting more from unemployment and refuse to return to work, the goal is that you're able to, number one, cover those that are in need of work, and try to, as best as you can, document your attempts to rehire them. And in certain instances, if they are replaceable, hire some other individuals so that you can work at 100%. But if for whatever reason you're not able to make that connection, you should prepare to return the unused portion of those funds. So don't feel the pressure of having to spend that money if you've made all earnest attempts to use it the way it's supposed to be used. Anything you want to add there,
I
Congressman?
would add that in
If you
the
can
new
hear me.
bill, in the new bill that we passed called the Heroes Bill, we want to expand the time from 2 years to 5 years. We want to eliminate the 75-25 provision. So you are definitely correct in everything you have said. So in my view, and my advice from my perspective, I just had a discussion with somebody yesterday, I think people need to be strategic in their thought process. Because when it's all said and done and you stay in touch with Small Business Administration and you let them know and you get their guidance, but the reason I say that is because it's driven based on demand. So if you got a situation driven based on demand, and demand is, as you noticed, I was noticing like in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, they are all opening up at different times. And I know in the region, like if you notice in the state, I think about 60, not 60, I think about 30 something counties, the governor is already. And I know that Philadelphia is sort of in the last position based on the numbers. So you have to pay attention to all of that in the design and the rebuild of your business. And that's where I said about using the small business development centers, SCORE, the Enterprise Center, using those organizations that think through how you would be organized, because I don't think you could be where you was before. So I think with the things that you have said to them, that pay attention, be strict to those rules, but also understand that how are you reimagining this situation, and what are the things that you'll do to plot for the future. Because let me tell you what and not that I have a crystal ball. I think that the demand is there. I think that people are ready. I mean, it's nice being in the house for a month, but you're talking about people in the house for 60 plus days. And I think there's the pent up demand that is there. So I think what you have to do is be ready to take advantage of the pent up demand and how you can take advantage of the pent up demand. So resources are very important. Redesign is very important. Public health is very important. So you think of this like a timeout. I know this is difficult. In terms of your employees, I agree. Obviously, they got to make a choice, like you got to make a choice. Um, and obviously, that's something that you got to think about strategy wise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Charnel also made a comment about your ability to cooperate with the White House, and have you been working, with the White House as it relates to, this particular issue? Any commentary on that?
Let's be. I'm gonna separate. I don't deal directly with the White House. One of the fortunate things I have is I'm also on the Ways and Means Committee, and the Secretary of Treasury is under the jurisdiction of the Ways and Means Committee. That's the Secretary of Treasury. Also, the Internal Revenue is under the jurisdiction of the Ways and Means Committee. So I'm very fortunate to be on the Ways and Means Committee and the Small Business Committee, which puts me somewhat in a unique position. And then the other thing is, with us being in the majority as the Democratic House, that also puts me. So I would say to you that our relationship is not me speaking directly about the White House, but our relationship. Look, this economy is not a Democrat or Republican economy. When you look at 14.7% unemployment, and it's probably higher than that. When you look at the amount of people homeless, you look at Philadelphia, you have 23, 24% poverty, and then you put pandemic on top of it. Something just, if we're smart, I don't care what party you're in, if you're smart, this is really about you who all are on this call. And this is not about me. We work for you. So you might as well say that we're thrust together to what's performed. And one thing I say about small businesses and all of you in this category, it's not partisan. I mean, in the House and in the Senate, there's a lot of gravity, and particularly for minority business. I about 3 weeks ago with Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware, and the Delaware Black Caucus. We did an hour and a half, similar to what you're doing now. We did something down in Delaware. I mean, same thing. I'm going to be doing something with pets. So the demand has been huge. I mean, I've been doing the restaurants, you name it, because as you know, you are the lifeline. I mean, right now, I'm not telling you, we're going through some difficult time. There's no question about that. But the fact of the matter is, you're very, very important. And that's why I want to stress. I like to see you all get back. But it's a question because I also gave some interesting statistics. As was said to me about Temple Small Business Development, they was forecasting between 30 to 50% of small businesses won't make it back. And in the news, heard somebody say as many as 100,000 small businesses. So what I'm hoping is that all of you on the phone, you think very wisely. If this is your dream, and I assume it is your dream, as being an entrepreneur and doing what you need to do, creating wealth, creating employment, making this a better city and a better state. I mean, you're the ones who make it a better city and a better state by, just think of the public good that you do when you hire somebody, you make them productive.
Thank you. So we
Good
have a
points.
question.
Very good points.
We have a question from Sean, STMA. I would read it, but it's pretty detailed, more focused on policy. So, Sean, if you want, you can ask your question.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Congressman, for taking the time. My question relates to a lot of the discussion that's come up in the last few weeks about having a more inclusive economy. You may have seen Jamie Dimon's comments from J.P. Morgan Chase about the need to have a more inclusive economy. I know that HR 2258 has uh, been, on the table for some time now during this session about the promotion and expansion of employee ownership. I happen to work in an employee ownership space, but in terms of dealing with companies that have minority certification status, it's quite difficult to do that because there's a chance that they will lose their status if they become 100% employee owned. That act would be incredibly helpful in promoting, especially for minority-owned businesses, the sale to an ESOP or to a worker cooperative of some sorts. I'm just curious as to whether or not there's any opportunity for that, given the increased discussion and given the fact that the pandemic is highlighting a lot of the issues that minority businesses are facing generally.
You raise an excellent point. Prior to the pandemic, as the Ways and Means Committee, we were in New York, and we met with Jack Lew, who used to be the Secretary Treasurer under President Obama, and we met with I can't recall the other, used to be the Secretary Treasurer under President Clinton. There's no question that this economy has left a lot of people out. So we established that, and it specifically left Black people out. And there's no question when you talk about ownership, I'm for that. Okay, you could talk about B corporations, things of that nature, because if you don't have an economy that from workers to customers and all, in my view, is not going to be an economy that's going to be that people feel fully benefit. So I'm not necessarily familiar with that specific bill, and you can tell me what it is. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think that that's what I mean by there's opportunity. Now, I'm not telling you it's not going to be tough, as I mentioned to you what the chairman of the Federal Reserve said. And one of the other things he said, you should go bold and big. You should go bold and big. And then the initiative that we passed on Friday, it was $3 billion. And we just did an initiative that was 2.2. So we have done, well, like close to $6 trillion. Now, if you take what we have done, you take what the Federal Reserve has done with the initiative they have, and what was a commissioner from the Federal Reserve was saying what he learned in 2008, and you remember that's the time when President Obama got elected. It took almost 10 years in rebuilding the economy. So in this time around, I think that's why all of you on this phone call is very important in the redesign. I don't believe that you can have an economy that goes back and exclude people. So may it be business, may it be workers, all of those have to be a part of it in the design. The Congressional Black Caucus under Karen Bass leadership, she's out of California. There's 55 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. There's 55. Pennsylvania, unfortunately, only has one. Virginia has two, Maryland has two. There's 18 members in Pennsylvania, and I'm the only one. I've been in this position, this going into my fourth year. But I share that with you because your comment, I mean, you have to address wealth building, wealth creation, inclusion. If you're talking about addressing issues such as poverty, and the reason with the pandemic, which is showing up so much regarding um, the, the the faults of the economy, because I mean, you could talk about education, you could talk about healthcare, you could talk about jobs. African Americans, as usual, and it's interesting, and I know your organization well because I was there when Bruce Crawley started it. What's that, about 25 years ago? Uh, and as sort of like the father of getting started. And it's amazing from when I think about when he first approached me about starting the chamber, and I was just getting started as the chairman of the appropriation committee. And I think, there's no question having you, some progress been made. So I don't want to say no progress been made, but there's a lot more that needs to be made. And those of us in public office need to make sure that there's policy. And I'm glad when you mentioned Mr. Diamond's name, same thing would be with Goldman Sachs. I know they have an initiative that is over at community college. I think the 10,000 small business they have, and there's some developed. So what I am, the niche that I have tried to do in the time that I've been in Congress right now is this space. I'm probably the first in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, fifth largest state, the first African American to ever be on the Small Business Committee, and the first African American to ever be on the Ways and Means Committee from Pennsylvania. There was Congressman Gray. He was on the he was the budget chairman, and he was the whip, the first whip ever in the history of the United States. So I hate to always keep mentioning those first, but that's important. So I've been working with like Jake Wheatley, who in Harrisburg is on the finance committee and specializing in it. You got Jordan Harris, who's the whip, and you have Joanne McClintock, who is the. So it's important, though I mention those names, it's important that we do some kinds of brainstorming sessions. Because we need, so from the state level to the federal level, because the way it happens is, even though all those numbers I'm telling you, there's huge amounts of money that are going to be distributed by the state and by the city. So that means Sorrell Parker, who's the whip, the leader, and Darrell Clark, who is the president. So what I'm saying to you, the difference I'm saying to you now is you have the people in place. The only question is that we have as much obligation, responsibility that we function as a unit. And I'm a strong advocate about building Black businesses. You must build Black businesses. So I'm stressing that to you. So through this pandemic, there's some things that are going on, but there's a lot more work got to do. And things like pandemics, recessions, and all this stuff sort of set people back. But I think we got to be clear about our missions and stay committed to our missions. And that's why I would encourage all of you who are on this call today. I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I say this in closing, so open up some other questions. I don't know if anybody knows Paul Bills Flores. And Paul Bills Flores, I know him well. He's 92 years old. Him and his wife been married 78, 79 years. And he's been in business for 45 years. 45 years. And there's not a lot of businesses that when you start talking about 45 years. So he passed it. His daughter now is running it, and his grandson is running it. So it's that kind of legacy building, in my view, that's going to take to build the restructure in these communities.
Thank you. So I know we had a question from Brian Murray. You can ask your question now if you like. So I know Brian was just asking more about the HEROES Act. So we know that it
Yes,
passed the House. So should we
yes.
expect anything from the Senate, either amending it or is it just dead on arrival as they threatened?
No, no, it's not dead on arrival. Um, they say that, but believe me, this is election year, and this economy is real challenging. Now, they may not want to come out and say something that, oh, Nancy Pelosi, but it's not about Nancy Pelosi, it's about America. And, she did a very good job in leading, and we all came together. And it's like putting a marker on the table. That's a marker because the first time we did the CARES Act, the Republicans wasn't for it neither. But we eventually got this will happen. So this is the time frame. We're in May and June. May, June. Sometime, and this just not to have a crystal ball. Believe me, something's going to happen. Now the question is it going to be the 3 trillion, or is it going to be less, or is it going to be more? The main stuff I want to make sure is protected in there is the small business stuff. I think that pretty much should be protected in there. But I think you got today is like May the 19th, May the 19th, May the 20th. You got Memorial Day coming up. So we go back to Washington. I think it's next Wednesday or next Thursday. I think the Senate is in there now. So believe me, that's hanging out there. So if you got relationships or friendships with the Senate, in our case, Senator Toomey, you reach out and talk to them about these things because we voted it. So it's no. So the answer is no, it is not dead. You heard me say that to you today. No, that is not dead.
Thank you. So now I just want to open it up. If anyone else has any questions, now you can. The floor is yours, so you can just ask them.
This is Charnel Hicks, and I just want to follow up on the comment that I had about White House initiatives. I've been on a series of meetings specifically geared toward African American businesses that the White House has hosted, and it made me think of the role that Renee Moore has played in speaking to the other side of the aisle. Are there sympathetic ears on the other side of the aisle that kind of are on the same page
I
at this
would, I would say yes. You know, since you met,
Well,
since you mentioned Renee Moore name, she
a
was a fantastic person.
so a friend of mine
Go ahead.
released his first album and then released the instrumental. He's been going really hard on marketing. He's been investing a lot of money in marketing and advertising his music and his video, which was on YouTube, that got a crazy amount of likes. And then those likes they get transferred over into Spotify. So if you go to Spotify, you'll see there's 100,000 or so on his album, but it's really because of the video that was on YouTube. I say all this to say, if you make a budget and you have a strategy, you can really make it happen, period.
Right. Well, that's why I agree.
And that's all it is. But for example, it's all about ads. It's all about promotion, and there's different ways to promote and market your album. I just say you need to have a good, even $1,000 can help you get a minimum of probably 1,000 listens, for example, and that's not enough. But
Miss Hicks,
I'm just trying to give an example. Like you can literally, you can see the ROI
Miss Hicks,
if you have money.
You can just let him talk. Let him get a word in so that he can
yeah, that is not me. I don't know
be
who that
involved
is.
in this dialogue, but please give him an opportunity to talk. Thank you.
I would totally agree with you. And look, I obviously encourage people to be democratic from my perspective, but this is about outcome for all of you on this phone. And and I did say when you ask that question, I think they should be held accountable. And I think when I say they, they represent you. You got to ask. I mean, I would invite and ask them to see if they're going to do it. And put, like anybody, you put their feet to the fire. You ask those kind of questions. So they could be having those meetings. I'm not necessarily plugged into those meetings. And let me say this about Renee, since I knew her very well. To my knowledge, I don't know if Renee Moore is around today, which is unfortunate. Renee had the ability of having that flexibility, and she developed those relationships. I'm not so sure, and this is just my view, and I've been around a little while. I'm not so sure that this is your grandmom's or grandfather's Republican Party, because the name of the game is to get together and get some outcomes. So I don't know. You may have a different judgment in that, but I just give you my view of it.
Thank you for that, Congressman.
Okay, thank you.
We appreciate you being available, and we appreciate your leadership, your flexibility also in terms of making a way. This meeting was not scheduled, months ago. We reached out to you, and thankfully, because of your office and of course your untiring efforts to go everywhere and provide as much feedback and real-time interaction, we definitely appreciate that. We also appreciate you acknowledging us in terms of the chamber and all of our efforts. One thing that we've been doing is focusing on collaboration, leveraging our relationships with professionals like yourself that are in key places, so that we can ensure that our members are getting, real-time information from subject matter experts. And as trusted messengers, if you will, I want to pose the question this way. Has there been any additional thoughts or efforts to support chambers like ours in terms of, the work that we're doing and, on the ground as we triage many of those businesses and help to reduce the 30 to 50% that may potentially, become casualties as a result of COVID-19. Any thoughts around that?
The answer is, I think, is Felicia on the phone? Is Felicia on? Or Lauren from my staff?
Yes, this is Felicia. Sorry, I was on mute. I'm here.
Felicia,
Yes.
isn't there something about the chamber being eligible for funding?
Under the
CARES Act.
yes, and Lauren can speak a little bit more to it if she's available, but chambers is that the 501c6, Lauren?
Yeah, so we signed on to a letter, and then also in the HEROES Act, we extended the eligibility for the PPP program to all nonprofits. So that would include chambers of commerce.
So that means
I think there needs to be probably some. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You should talk. This Felicia. She gives the number. She's on the either one of them. Felicia, talk to her, because the idea is sort of like what you were saying, adding stability to entities like yourself, being resourceful to helping your members. That I remember that specifically we put in there.
Great. No, that's good. It's good. I know when initially it was mentioned within the CARES Act, there was nothing detailed to frame out what that looked like, what the requirements were, and the overall process. So I wanted to know if there was anything else that was done, because it was mentioned, I believe, as early as the first round of funding. However, again, not being shared in terms of what the blueprint was some of the concerns.
Correct. Well, that's why you need to make sure. Feel free to reach out to Felicia Parks Cox, and then she's the one. Felicia, why don't you give your email or your number, please?
Absolutely. I just put it in the chat, but it's you can reach me at Felicia, FELICIA .Parker-Cox, COX as in X-ray, @mail.house commonwealth.gov. I'm located in the district office. You can reach us by phone at 215-276-0340. And Lauren, who is also on the call, is the congressman's legislative person in DC. So between myself and Lauren, we can definitely get answers to specific questions.
Great,
And we
great.
want,
Definitely, one of the things that we've done. Go ahead.
I want to say, that's what we want. That's what we hear from folks. I want to stress that. There's no reason why Felicia gave out and Lauren does the policy stuff on the small business stuff. That's why we on this call, because we want to understand your challenges and what you're going through and what kind of, I saw some of the questions asking about specifically PPP. I hope they will talk directly about those questions.
And thank you again for that information. One of the things that the African American Chamber has done is taking the initiative of collaborating with the other chambers, you know, the Hispanic, the LGBTQ, the Asian Chamber, as well as pulling in other organizations at different times in terms of providing them information. So this will be great after we circle back with Felicia, so that we
And if you want, after
continue to keep them also informed.
if you want, after you get settled at some point, I don't have a problem having you, the Hispanic Chamber, the Asian Chamber, all together. However, because like I said again, you are the future collectively, you know, because it depends a lot. So I want you to be clear. I'm available and accessible to you.
Outstanding. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey Barry, are there any other questions?
So
You
we
see in
have
the
one more
chat?
question. So it's a construction related question, and they're primarily looking to see how do they move forward with construction projects in this environment. Should they wait for more test site availability? Because a lot of the projects are on hold, so it's uncertainty on how they should move forward.
That's a good question. I think the state has decided for construction to move forward. You raise a very good question about, you can either find out through the state in terms of their commerce department, their health department, like what are the kind of ground rules with that. I think they were moving as long as people were following the public health guidelines. So I'm no expert on that, but I think is online. I would encourage the chamber, you should bring in people to talk about that, you know, where they are, and from the governor's office or someone in terms of where they are, so your people can be fully prepared to take advantage of those opportunities. But the thing I want to stress the most is, as you come in, reimagine, how's it going to be, how you going to move forward, and what way you're going to do it.
Thank you again, Congressman. Really appreciate your time. Just a heads up to everyone, this webinar is recorded, so you'll have access for the playback and to get more information on what was discussed today as well. Donovan, did you have anything to add?
I just want to say thank you again to Dwight Evans, Congressman Evans, and his team for providing, again, real-time information, support, being totally transparent, answering any and all questions we have. And I hope and pray that every business owner, every professional on this line takes the opportunity to access the chamber. Should you have any questions or issues or concerns, we're here for you. Currently, myself, Tiffany, and Barry are doing outreach calls to each and every member that we have. So, again, in addition to the survey that we've already circulated electronically, we're carving out time to reach out to you personally. You can also catch us on WURD Radio on Monday at 6 p.m. So there are just, again, a number of different things we're doing, social media lives on IG, Instagram, LinkedIn. But the goal is, again, at the end of the day, is to get this information out to you right away. And thanks again, Congressman Evans. You heard the message. You got to get out and make sure that your voice is registered with the necessary people so that they're aware that you're aware of what's being proposed and your level of support, so that, again, it can go through a lot sooner. And it's about wealth creation, wealth building, and generational wealth. So thanks again, and I hope everyone has a great day.
I'd like to thank you. And thank all of you and keep encouraged. In the last statement you made, folks, in addition to this, you do have elections coming up. I just want you to pay attention to that process. Is vote by mail is one option. I got to say that to you because at the end of the day, you can do all the things we're doing here, but this democracy belongs to you, all of you. All of you have ownership in this democracy. You may not agree with everything that comes out of Washington, Harrisburg, or even City Hall, or wherever you may operate out of the county, but I gotta encourage you to take ownership. So again, thank you. My staff is available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.